Hey, everybody, welcome back to PLACE Navigators. We're doing something a little different today. We're actually going live at the same time that we're going to record this episode. It's still going to be available on all of our platforms to catch it later. But if you're real time with us, we're super grateful. We want to welcome you. We want to bring you in. So, Chris, episode 8, PLACE
I know.
Navigators. What are we doing today?
You know, uh, I think that it's going to be a really good one. And I know before we go into today, we should really dive what we did last episode. And the last episode that we were doing was talking about how home prices are too high.
So
And
freaking high. Yeah.
yeah, and we say this over and over again. Affordability is the number one enemy for people to buy homes. It
Yeah.
really is. And
Yeah.
starting out in this game, it's
Yeah.
really if you don't have your ducks in a row and you don't have that income or savings, it could be really daunting, but it's not impossible. I'm here to tell you, it's not impossible. You can do it. So
For
we
sure.
talked about how inventory is going to be in demand for the foreseeable future. We talked about how it costs so much to build,
Hmm.
taxes, how that's going
Hmm.
up, mortgage interest rates are high. But when you look at the bigger scheme of things, it's actually a normal. It's just really hard for us to hear that because we like those 2 and 3% interest rates,
We
right?
did. Yeah. Past tense, bro. Past tense.
Yeah,
That's in the history
yeah,
books.
yeah. So today, I think with that being said, with everything talking about prices being higher, what I think we should really dive into and what we plan on diving into is talking about the multiple offer strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chris, when you and I came together on this, we had a vision that Place Navigators exists to equip our audience with the information they need to build wealth through real estate, either through ownership, investment, or even partnering with us in building a career in real estate. And so I think this is a super important topic. And when we think about multiple offer strategies, I think we might have some people that catch this episode that they're a little bit surprised that this is the conversation. And it's because what I find day in and day out, and you can share with me about the people you talk to, but I find that there are more people than not who are surprised at the strength of the real estate market. They've heard the doom and gloom on the news, and they think that because the rates shot up and in 22 that it really decreased demand, and in a lot of ways they're right, demand did go down, but in a lot of ways what happened is that when the demand went down, the inventory came up a little bit. um, the the inventory came up a little bit because that demand decreased, but when you look at it overall, the prices came up too. And it wasn't just the rates. Sure, there was some inflation. Sure, there was some things affected to the rates increasing, but the actual value of the properties went up. And part of why that happened is what episode 7 is all about. So, Chris, we broke economics 101, supply and demand. Demand went down, supply was so low that even with a slight increase in inventory, prices did not go down. They might have for a month or two, but overall, year over year and month over month, prices have been increasing since at least 2011. So, with that said, if you're a buyer in today's market, Chris, you might encounter more competition than you're expecting. And what that means is that bidding wars are a real possibility for you. The properties that people like, the properties that people want, are often getting multiple offers. I'm in a bidding war with a buyer right now on vacant land.
Hmm.
Like what the heck, right?
Wow.
And so today we're going to peel back the cover and give our audience some of our very best strategies for winning in multiple offer situations. So start us off, Chris. How do we win?
You know, if you're approved for, let's say, a 600, or let's just say realistically, if you're going to buy a median home around here, is going to be up in closer to the $700,000 range. You don't want to be shopping in that $700,000 range. You actually want to be 75 to
Yeah.
90% with what you're approved. And a
Well, you
lot of
got
people are
nowhere to
probably
go.
like, Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, and here's the thing, a lot of people that are listening to this are probably like, whoa, so you're telling me that you don't want me to shop at $700,000
Mm-mm.
in price range if I'm approved for that range? No, I do not. One, it's not feasible because they literally went through your finances, especially if you went through somebody that I have recommended and worked with
Mm-hmm.
as a mortgage professional. Like they're going to know your numbers, and I'm not going to be comfortable allowing that to happen. And as an agent, I'm looking out for your best interests, and shopping above that range is not going to be in your best interest. It's going to be a a heartbreaker for you. So I
Mm-hmm.
think 75 to 90% is definitely the range that you need to be shopping in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It gives you the ability to go up, and what I found is most people they don't necessarily want to max out on everything, anyways. And then the last thing that I found is that like if you are approved to like Chris's example of 700 and you only shop at 700 properties, and then one thing goes wrong, we need closing costs. There's another offer, something goes wrong. What happens is that because you have nowhere to go, all we're doing is breaking your heart over and over and over. Like we don't even have a fight in it. So Chris, in addition to shopping below your preferred budget, what's another way to win?
I think one thing that is a little underrated is that whole entire uh, love letter. So, a- and
Oh, he's getting
and
scandalous
it's,
now.
I mean, hey, we're not getting too scandalous. You're not writing the seller a love letter to them.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about how you appreciate the property. What is it that you love about the
Mhm.
property? What is it that you see in the property? How do you feel about the property? Uh, you know, these things that you plan on doing in the future, kind of lay it out. Unless you plan on going in there and demolishing it, I'd probably be like, I wouldn't write that. But
Yeah.
appreciate the property and make it kind of subjective to the property, and not outline your dynamics, because there's going to be some things that you cannot. Me as a real estate professional, I'm going to say you can't say that you're um, a a white male with 5 children and you're divorced. Like you can't say that kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
gotta you gotta keep it kind of subjective to the property,
Mhm.
and don't violate any of those um,
Absolutely.
fair housing laws. And really, it's just focusing on what you see, what you feel in that property.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And not to be the redundancy department of redundancy, but like Chris said, the letters make a lot of sense. A lot of people advise on them. We think they're a really great strategy, but you cannot violate fair housing. You're putting everybody in trouble and in risk. And so the focus is why you love the property, you love the location, what it's going to mean for your commute. Those kinds of things are really powerful things to help a seller feel really good about who they're selling their home to in a legal and ethical way. When sellers tell us that they have a certain preference or this thing or that thing, like we can't really help them with that. But we've had sellers that have come to us and they've said, hey, now that I've signed the offer, like, is there anything you can tell me about the buyer? Is there anything I can tell my neighbors that they can expect from the next owners? And those are things that we can handle very carefully. Chris, one of the other things that I've found to be super powerful is something we call escalation clauses. And in my terminology, an escalation clause is like the eBay bidding of real estate. It's agreeing to bid a set amount, a set increase over a bona fide competing offer. And then it has a maximum price. So you say basically, like, to fill in some numbers, you use 700 earlier. Say we're being good kids and we're shopping at a number below. Say we're shopping at 650 and we're in a multiple offer situation and our max is 700. Well, what the escalation clause addendum says is I'll be a bona fide competing offer by, say, let's go $5,000 up to a max of 700,000. And so the way that works is that if somebody say bid 675, you're automatically agreeing to 680 because you said I'd pay 5,000 over a bona fide offer up to a max. So you receive that escalation addendum back executed at 680 with that other offer attached to document and prove that like it was a real offer. The seller isn't just jacking you up or whatever. No, number one question I get is how high do I go? And I like to use a mindset with that. And the mindset that I like to use with that, Chris, is this. If the property sells for $1 more than your maximum, I need you to be in a place where you either don't care because you're like, that is way too much, or you just simply couldn't qualify. Like you couldn't get the loan. There's nothing you could do about it. Because when we have people that kind of try to hold back and try to negotiate a little bit on these deals that are in multiple offer situations, what I see happen more often than not is sometimes they have more that they were willing to put on the table, and there's no second chances. The seller is going to make a decision. The seller is going to go into contract, and done is done, and you miss the boat. And so we need the people that we're advising to be in that mindset of, if you want this bad boy, if this is the property for you, you need to be in a place to where you are putting what you can do, what you want to do, and what you're willing to do on the table so that you have the least amount of regrets possible. You're not negotiating against the realtor. They're on your team, and it's a team effort. Chris, what's another way that we can help incentivize a seller to take our offer over another offer?
This one's like a really awesome way to do it. When you know you have a little bit of time on your side, and let's say they're going to be reviewing offers on Tuesday, which is not guaranteed, by the way. So just keep that in mind.
That man's wisdom.
Yeah, just keep that in mind. But another way around this is to do a pre-inspection before the before your offer gets put in, and it's really easy. You just set up a pre-inspection. I know Joe and I, we got a list of inspectors. We got a really good inspector that we know that just will right on the spot. We could schedule them right then and there, and we give you a list of different inspectors, and you could have an inspection done before the house is even the offer even gets accepted on the house. That right there, you just removed your inspection contingency because you already did your inspection. But you remember, you need to have that timeline needs to be there. So that's not going to always be the case. You know, another way to really sweeten the deal is to do a non-refundable earnest money. I mean, basically, it's like a bribe to that
a legal
seller.
one.
It's a legal bribe. It's like, hey, bro, hey, here's 5,000 or 5,000. Here's 10,000, non-refundable. Will you take my offer? And that's a serious, like, okay, this guy's serious. He must have
sign and receive.
Yep. And that's an easy $10,000 in that pocket that they were going to get anyways, because that just knocks it down. You're not paying, if your price is 700, you're not paying 700 or 710. You know, you're still owed the 690. So keep that in mind.
It's applicable. Yeah. Super important part. If you release that earnest money, make sure your contract says that it's applicable to your purchase. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, do I have to pay that earnest money if my offer is not selected?
No.
No,
that's only if they
telling the
accept your
seller,
offer.
you take my offer, I'm going to pay you this money anyways. I'm going to give it some of it to you now, and I'm going to give the rest of it to you when I close. And what's interesting is, depending on how many contingencies you do or do not have in your offer, you may have committed that money anyways. So it can sit in escrow committed to the seller, or it can sit in the seller's account committed to the seller, and it's not a lot different. Because if you don't close on the property, you may not be receiving that money back anyways. Now, there's exceptions to that where that money's protected by contingency, but you know, there's lots of nuances there that we or your broker can make sure that you're clear about. So speaking of contingencies, Chris talked about doing a pre-inspection. Sometimes sellers provide an inspection. Chris, what are your thoughts on seller provided inspection reports?
Look, you don't know if Joe Blow, his cousin, did
Joe,
the inspection. Yeah, those Joes, you gotta watch out for
you gotta watch out.
them. Hey, and no joke. Like, you don't know the level of inspection. So I always tell people, always, I recommend inspections regardless to be done by a professional that you, the buyer, hires, not us realtors. We don't hire your inspector. An
Yeah,
inspector is a third party,
yeah,
not has no allegiance to Joe or myself. Yes, we have inspectors that we have worked with because we work with a lot of different inspectors. We just have one that is really Johnny on the spot, so our clients really like them.
yeah.
So that right there is the reason why I say, hey, if they have a pre-inspection, not 100%.
Yeah, trust but verify. I
Yeah,
think where wisdom would lie. We as real estate professionals cannot recommend that you waive your inspection, but I'll tell you a lot of buyers do, and I'll tell you that I'm a buyer that in certain circumstances, I've thrown the dice on that deal, and I've waived inspection on, well, truthfully, the last two properties I bought, I did end up waiving inspection for. I was prepared, ready, and willing to deal with those homes. One of those homes was not a fixer, and I did an inspection post closing, and to my relief, it was in great condition. One of them was kind of a fixer upper, make it a rental thing, and we spent significant money remodeling that. And so, if you are going to waive inspection, my wish for you is that you don't have all your money tied up in such a way that if you had a problem, you wouldn't have a way to fix it. So Chris, we're kind of knocking on the door of these contingencies. What are other contingencies that a buyer may choose to include or not include in their offer?
so you also have the appraisal part.
Hmm.
And like, let's say you're getting funding, the appraiser is going to be sent out, dispatched by the financing institute that's going to be evaluating the home. Sometimes the mathematical, nerd talk here, the evaluation of the home is so much more than like you're getting a good deal, right? The valuation is way higher than the price that you're paying, and sometimes it won't trigger an appraisal. But I'm going to argue that most houses you should just go in with thinking that there's going to be an appraiser and they're going
Hmm.
to appraise it 10 grand under what you imagine, because that's just be prepared for that. As a
Because you're
buyer, you
bidding,
hope that,
you're
yeah,
competing, you're fighting for that property. Yeah.
yeah. And as a buyer, just keep that in mind. You hope that it works out in your benefit, but it may not. You may have to come in with an extra 10 grand and keep that number in mind. That's why we have you at shopping at a lower price market than your cap, because you may have to come in that extra 10 grand to make the deal happen, because the bank's not going to loan you out that money. They're saying this is how
Yeah.
much we're going to loan out. And
Yeah.
you can waive your appraisal. And I only recommend this because it's a financial commitment to the
Hmm.
seller to pay a fixed amount over their appraisal if your appraisal is lower. So like I said, if it's a 700 and it appraised at 690, you got to come up with that extra 10 grand. But you can waive that, and I only recommend that if you're financially able to make that happen. Um,
Right.
yeah.
So if I had some flexibility in my down payment, I was putting a lot of money down, or I had some other options and opportunities between the loans I choose. What you're saying is I could make a commitment as a buyer up front to bridge a gap in any appraisal discrepancies. Is what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
And in your
Yeah.
example, that commitment would be, I'd say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, up to $10,000 in a difference of the appraisal between the contract price and the appraisal price, I'll just pay that out of my pocket. Whereas what we find is if you have an appraisal issue inside of a contract, the typical remedies, if you're not making an adjustment to those terms, the typical remedies are I know at least in Washington State there's 4 remedies, but only 3 of them are viable. And these 3 are pretty consistent in other areas too, like where we also service in Idaho. One is if there's no exception to the appraisal waiver or the appraisal contingency, that you can just completely walk away from the deal. Because if the deal is contingent upon the appraisal, then that contingency gives you walkaway power. Number 2 is you could agree to pay the difference if you wanted to at a later time if you didn't agree to upfront. And then number 3 is, and this is where we see a lot of things kind of shake out, is there's maybe a compromise between the 2 parties. In Chris's example of a $10,000 discrepancy, maybe the seller lightens the price by $5K, but the buyer agrees to pay the additional $5K at closing in cash. And so there's lots of remedies to appraisal, but it's very attractive to a seller when a buyer makes a commitment up front that if there's an appraisal problem, the buyer's already putting some skin in the game and saying what they're willing to commit to up front.
And one thing I want to highlight is um, we recommend whenever we start the buying process with somebody that already has a house. Let's say you already have a house and you're putting it on the market, but you want to go find that house that you're searching for first. And this the appraisal waiver can really kind of bite you in the butt because if your house appraises a little bit under what somebody's willing to pay for,
Mm.
you may end up losing out on that amount because you're contingent on that house selling, and you have a tight timeline for when your house sells. If you list your house whenever you put in an offer on another house, so it could really mess you up, and that's why we highly recommend before you even start shopping and you plan on selling your home, list it because
Yeah.
that appraisal can actually make you lose out. We have seen it on our team. And it's going to be something that we constantly, have to navigate with new people that haven't had to deal with this. And Joe, you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've been on the investment side for
Mm-hmm.
15 plus. And
Mm-hmm.
this can really, um, hurt you if you don't list your house before you start shopping. And there's ways to get around that. And I think we could totally go further down that rabbit hole, and that could be a totally
Yeah,
different episode on its own,
we probably
honestly.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to put a bow on it and kind of put a pin in it, a couple other thoughts. One of the things about the inspection is if you really need to keep an inspection contingency in the deal, one of the things that we see have some success is making it a pass fail. When it comes to that appraisal, that's really going to depend on the amount of money that you have in your hands that you can do stuff with. If you're a low down payment buyer, you're doing an FHA or a bond loan or maybe even a VA loan or something like that, that's not going to be really an option for you. And that's why we give you a long list of things. Now, depending on the cash that you have in hand, sellers they're paying tremendous closing costs. They're usually paying about 3 times more in closing costs than the buyer is paying. So you can offer to buy or offer to pay some of those closing costs. Other things are, when you're going through the lending process, you may encounter that you're going up against cash buyers. And so the seller knows that a cash buyer has less red tape to get through than a finance buyer. So Chris, if you thought it was even possible that you might have to compete against a cash buyer, what's something you could do to make sure that you still stand out in that crowd.
I'm going to go with Envoy Mortgage, and I'm going to have them underwrite me. So that
Yes.
way, it's like having the money in the bank at that point in time. They know I'm pre-underwritten. I'm running around with the money essentially closer to my pocket, which is closer to their pocket, which is what they want. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are moving up and out into a different property. So think about that. People that are selling their houses, unless it's for the three Ds,
Mm,
dislocation, they're being moved somewhere, somebody died or divorced, um,
mhm.
and then a family dynamic change. So 4Ds, I guess. So if they're in that situation, they may not need the money like somebody that's going contingent on a property. They're going to want that cash in their pocket. So the closer that you can put that money to your pocket means the closer that you can put it to their pocket, and that's being underwritten by Envoy Mortgage, in my opinion.
Yeah. So a perfect segue to that is, if that seller is also a buyer, they may have a tension of time between when they're closing on the home they're selling, having those funds to put down on the house they're buying. And so when you have a seller occupied property, a solid strategy is to discuss with your broker about renting back the property for a short amount of time to the seller so that they can have a little easier transition in their move. It turns out you got to have the money, right? And so if they got to be out by a certain date to sell you the house, and then they got to close and have the money and get the transfer before they can then put that money down on the home they're buying, there might be a time where they're kind of literally and metaphorically homeless. And so sometimes just easing the stress, making the transition for the seller easier with a 3 day, 5 day, 10 day post closing. One of the ones I bought, I wasn't moving into the property immediately. In fact, we didn't even move into the property for like 6 or 8 months. But we wanted to snag it because it came on the market and we knew what we wanted. And so they wanted it for 30 days. Well, shoot, I wanted the mortgage payment paid for 30 days. So it was a win-win where they could rent it back for those 30 days. And I got a mortgage payment out of the deal for a home that I wasn't ready to move into anyways. Um, Chris, what are some other ways that you could try to stand out against another bidder in this situation of a multiple offer thing to make the seller believe that you are the one they should choose over another, like especially in those situations where all the offers are really close in dollars. We're just really tight where everybody's kind of the same.
And this is kind of a strong-handed move, in my opinion, is offering 5 to 10% down as their earnest money. That right there is going to show, okay, this guy's got some bank behind him, and
Mhm.
he's a serious mover. He's probably going to have a lot. He or she is going to have a lot less problems when it comes to buying a home. Also, consider writing an offer that has your credit score, verification of assets, proof of conditional loan approval, and so on. So anything that pretty much shows like, hey, this guy's going to have no problem getting his loan. It's not as strong as being pre-underwritten, but
Mhm.
that's another method. And here's another one. Like they're going to have to move. They got to get
Mhm.
all the stuff out of there, unless this isn't going to work for somebody that's got a vacant home, unoccupied as strong. Maybe it could, maybe all their stuff's in storage, but you could offer to pay for their moving.
You pay
That's
for the
one.
moving van?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could offer to pay for their
Yeah.
moving van. You could offer to pay, like, hey, don't worry about the cleaning. Like
Yeah.
like, and if you list with Joe and Chris and any of the Platz team, I tell you what, we do the cleaning. That's
Yeah.
one of our things that we do
I
complimentary.
thought you were going to offer to help them move. I was going to say that's a quick figure exclusive. Like, like, like
You guys
I ain't
heard it.
sitting in
Joe
the truck
said
here, bro.
offer and move.
Yeah.
And if you work with Joe, I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, Chris, these are excellent ideas, and I think they're just a few ideas. But here's what we want our audience to walk away with. We want to walk away with that a good broker, a broker that knows how to fight and win in our markets that we're working with, will know your market and will know how to coach you into the right thing. Some of it's going to be circumstantial upon your ability and your capacity from a financial perspective, but they're gonna know what your best strategies are. And of course, Chris and I and all of our 3,000 place partners across the nation, we are here to help you. We want to help you buy, invest, sell at the highest price possible, and build your wealth through real estate. So you can always reach out to us online, or we have a toll-free number you can call or text. It's 844-686-9345. Chris, what are they looking forward to the next time you and I jump in?
I think a great topic that we should be covering is getting into being a realtor, and
Oh,
kind of
there
a
you go.
real talk on what to expect. And I tell you what, I'm not holding back any information here. I'm an open book, and people that ask me, I tell them
Yeah.
how it is, and I don't want to go into it because I don't want to leak out what we're going to be talking about. But I think
Ooh.
that I know. Let's take that think word out of there. I know that this is going to be an impactful episode for anybody that is interested in becoming a realtor, becoming part of the real estate whole entire network, just to know what we face becoming realtors. And then you got Joe on the other side, that's a successful 20 plus year realtor. And I could tell you from being an investor to becoming a realtor how that's been so far as well. So stay tuned for that.
No, the rookie and the veteran are going to lay it out. I love it. Well, right on. Well, Chris, always a pleasure to be in partnership with you. We want to thank you guys again. Check us out. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Share this with other people you know that are looking to build their wealth in real estate. Maybe they're looking to build a career in real estate. Maybe they're already in it, but they could find one thing that we say that could help them in what they're doing. And otherwise, this is Place Navigators, and we are out.